Hi there, my name is Willie Dalton, and I'm going to be your guide today through 1 Kings 19 through 22. The last time you watched one of these videos, you left off at chapter 18, where you saw Elijah challenging Ahab and the prophets of Baal to basically show up. Sure enough, the God of Israel showed up, but Baal did not. And so Ahab went home with his tail between his legs. And on the way, he encountered another man's garden and was pretty taken by it, was a little jealous. And so he made an offer to purchase this garden from this guy, and the guy rebuffed him. He said no. And Ahab, the king, was pretty flustered and didn't really know what to do, so he scampered home to his wife, Jezebel, and kind of complained to her, and she set that man up to be killed. Yes, he got what he wanted, but it also brought about a prophecy that both Ahab and his wife are going to die. They're going to die fairly gruesome deaths. Jezebel, being the headstrong wife that she is of Ahab, she issues a threat to Elijah, who has just made this prophecy about her and her husband. And naturally, when you receive a death threat, you're pretty afraid. And Elijah ends up just going out into the wilderness to get away from everything. Like, he is just reeling and trying to recenter himself and find his faith. He sits down at the foot of a tree and is wanting to give up completely. He actually cries out and says, "I've had enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died." So he goes to sleep, but he's awoken by an angel. And this angel says, "Hey, look, I have a freshly baked loaf of bread for you. I have water you should drink." And so he begrudgingly does and goes back to sleep. And then the angel wakes him again and says, "Eat some more. I need you to go to Mount Sinai." And so he, with that little bit of bread and water, travels for 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai. Now, at Mount Sinai, God proceeds to put on what I like to think of as a pep rally for Elijah. He brings about earthquakes, terrible winds, and even a fire to rip through this valley on top of the mountain that Elijah is standing on. God speaks to Elijah very directly and tells him what is going to be next in his life, that he's not done with him. And as tired as he is, he has more work to do. And so that work specifically is referring to people we will hear about later on in the second book of Kings. But specifically, what matters right now is that we are going to see Elisha come into play and see his anointing as a prophet. It's Elijah's job to go find Elisha. And sure enough, he does. He's plowing his field with his oxen, and he puts his scarf around him and sets him apart. Like, "Hey, you are now a prophet, and I am calling you to come and serve with me." Elisha is obedient, and he leaves a lot behind. I'm going to kind of speed through the next 2-3 chapters here. They mostly look like a series of battles that is fought with King Ben-Hadad against Ahab and Jezebel. And remarkably, this king, Ben, is, although he's very persistent, he is not the most wise when it comes to battle, and so he actually loses twice. So after these 2 battles, Ahab has Ben-Hadad in his custody, and certainly I can only guess that the right move at the time would be to take care of that king that has been attacking you. He doesn't kill him, surprisingly. But what does result from this battle is yet another prophecy that Ahab is not long for this world. And sure enough, this foreshadowing comes, as I spoke earlier on, through him lusting after this man's garden. Jezebel makes sure that her husband gets his vineyard, his garden, and this prophecy comes down, and he is certainly shaken by it. But nonetheless, his death comes around. It's quite randomly seeming. Like there's a battle and someone shoots an arrow randomly and it takes out poor Ahab, and that is that. He ends up dying, and just as was prophesied earlier in these chapters, his death and where his body is taken and how the dogs are licking up the blood, like all these gruesome details are in the latter half of chapter 22. Ahab was yet another king who fell short in the eyes of God. Despite him showing some compassion throughout this, he is certainly married to a very, very evil woman, and we're going to see more about her later and see whether or not the prophecy of her own death comes true. But I want to go back and spend some time looking at Elisha. God has reserved 7,000 of the Israelites from Baal worship. You know, the Canaanite religion was so pervasive at the time, and it was seen by people as not a bad thing to be worshiping both Yahweh and the Canaanite religion, Baal. But the fact that there were these 7,000 reserved, yet that Elijah and Elisha did not know those people existed. Here they are. Elijah is certainly down in the dumps. He is not feeling his job right now. The fact that Elisha, to kind of remove him and separate him to God, was a very meaningful choice, and is one that's not to be taken lightly as we are reading it, because I can certainly imagine that that would not be an easy choice at all, to leave the comfort behind and to go serve this pretty odd man who had certainly done amazing things. But to not know your position and how important it would be is going to really come into play and be surprising as to how confident and zealous Elisha is in these coming chapters.